Hey folks, George Leoniak here. I'm back with another video here at New Geometry, and I'm going to follow up a little bit on my previous video, which was on the golden tree of life and the golden seed of life. So this continues to go a little bit further, and it's amazing where the journey's taken me. I wrapped up that video talking about the Pentakis Icosidodecahedron. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. So just what you could see what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the golden seed of life is when you're looking at this form from this view here, it easily looks like the 64 tetrahedron grid with all the little hexagram stars all throughout this. They're all in blue. Now this red is actually golden rhombuses, and this whole shape is a obtuse golden rhombus, which is kind of like a inflated hexagon, flat hexagon expanding into space to become a cube. This little golden rhombus is part of this tetrahedron, this tricontahedron, which I did a video on quasicrystals related to taking this whole structure apart that's based on these obtuse and acute golden rhombuses. So you could picture one of these little shapes that I pulled off of this giant structure as this shape right here. So this is a highly full of geometry. So basically the empty space that we consider in some of these forms, as many of us know, is not empty, but it's also not just platonic solids like cubes and octahedrons. Much of it is constructed out of these little golden rhombus pieces. So I know I've jumped quite into it a little bit, but I just wanted to let you know what I mean by the golden seed of life and the tree of life. If I cover up these outside edges and these 2 points at the bottom, you could see that that's the tree of life that is often depicted in the seed of life drawing, because remember, this is going to be a drawing that we can do with the Phi circles. So anyway, I wanted to show you a couple of the forms, because the first thing you're going to see is that shape of the golden tetrahedron, the golden rhombus inside of a cube. And what you'll see is that the division of the cube edge is in phi proportion, and that's where that hexagon is fitting in. Okay. So this is what it would look like at these various different views, but you could see that it's structured within a cube. And today we're going to reverse that, because here the cube is the hexagon, the golden hexagon shape here is within the cube. Today we're going to reverse that and show you what happens when the golden hexagon here, this hexagon shape that's made up of the golden rhombus, actually intersects the vertices of the cube, and that creates the golden rhombus around the cube. So this is pretty cool structure. It's very cool to spin this one around with that extra weight that it has to be able to spin around. It's tough for me to get it going, but when I spin this on the floor, it will just spin and spin and spin for a long time. So it's kind of like a little flying saucer. So anyway, starting off with a few props, I've got my slideshow set up. We're going to go through a lot of things, and we're going to go all the way out to the fourth dimension with this, which is 4D geometry. And in future videos, we're going to go into the 5D geometry, and it all led from starting off with this basic shape. Okay, so yeah, join me for this one. It's going to be pretty exciting. One last prop before we jump into it, so I don't have to switch out. This is something that Frank, he kind of gave me a tip of how to build this. He uses this a lot in his lectures. You can see it's just a flat hexagon, right? And this copper rod that I have in here is very specific to root 3. So those are the two triangles at root 3, and root 3 is within a cube. So I want to show you how the cube expands, and as it will pass through that golden rhombus shape and a few other rhombus shapes as we go. But all of a sudden you take a root 3, it's built into it, and I'm just going to slide this over down here. And as we do this, the cube is going to inflate and expand until √3 is inside the cube. So there's your cube, square, trying to get it squared up for you as best as possible. And there's √3 along the diagonal there on the inside of the cube. Pretty neat little prop, little sculpture that Frank made a long time ago. You could see that that right there, that √3 measurement is essentially what this yellow crossbar is within this cube. But now this is creating a flexible model, and along that way, as we move this cube down, we could shrink it down to the golden rhombus type of shape. So it's really just an extension of that. Okay, so ready for the slideshow? I'm ready to jump in. I'm pretty thrilled and excited as normal to share what I've been working on with this. Little extended intro there, but here are the slides. And yep, like I said, we were going to start off taking a look at the seed of life in the cube. And that was just the one I was just showing you here, right? And there is the √3 measurement that goes through the center, and it's intersecting through the cube. So you can picture the flat hexagon expanding to the golden rhombus and upward until it extends out to the cube. Just a couple drawings from the previous one. This is all done with, simple drawing techniques with the phi-based relationship circles. Now, when you start to draw it this way, the big thing that it does to the drawings that we work with in sacred geometry is that we're often used to having the cube oriented with this bar, with the three main bars of the cube oriented so the hexagon is facing you with these sides parallel to one another, oriented vertically. But it makes a lot more sense in the drawings to actually have the cube tilted, because it's actually one of 5 cubes that are in a dodecahedron. So the dodecahedron in these drawings and the icosahedron and the other forms that are built off of that, they're going to be vertical bar, but the cube is going to be off positioned like this. So that's one thing to work when you're working with these newer drawings to get your head around, is how the cube is angled like that. But it's allowed me to kind of really expand my understanding of sacred geometry. And I wanted to start to talk about this little form over here that I was talking about that has the cube inside the golden rhombus. So the golden rhombus, this orange here, this is if you're looking at it from down above, this is the cube from down above. And if we slid this orange shape here over, it would fit this red hexagon that we see here. Now that's the golden rhombus from above. Now there is fitting inside the cube, just like within this drawing here. Now inside that, if we were to tilt this, on its side, like from this to a side view, then this is what it would be looking like on the side. There's the flattened version, and then there's a little cube that's built off of, just like I'm showing you in this little model, off of that golden rhombus. And the really awesome thing, we're going to explore a little bit about spheres within this, the spheres within spheres, is that cube shares the same size inner sphere. They share the same sphere inside one another as the rhombus, the golden obtuse golden rhombus. So they're kind of like built in around one another. It's not like all of a sudden that obtuse flattened golden rhombus has a different size sphere. It actually has the same size sphere within it, which is so cool. Now, from these drawings, they're optical illusions, because when they're flat like this, it looks like this sphere is just floating in open space within the cube. And similarly with the giant hexagon here, which is the golden flattened golden rhombus, this one here. So, but really they share the same size inner circle. So that's just a kind of cool relationship that they share with one another. Here it is again. This is now just focused on the shape that I've been showing you here with the cube. So this is, picture this drawing, there's the red bar, that's the orange bar here. And that is the cube, the blue cube that's in there positioned vertically. So that means that it's on its vertex, which means that's the orientation that it could spin on. So that's √3 down the middle. And then all of a sudden, if we turn that whole structure, cube and golden rhombus, you'll see that the cube from above, which is corresponding to the black cube in here, is meeting those cross sections of the division of the golden rhombus up in here, and there's the larger portion of the golden rhombus out around it, okay? So you've got golden rhombuses in various different sizes, but what I'm trying to point out is that they're interacting with the cube in a way that they share this same size sphere. So it's kind of like the Merkaba, the star tetrahedron that many meditators who focus on sacred geometry visualize themselves within this kind of star tetrahedron type of shape. This is like an extended version of it. And in fact, some authors will talk about, if your Merkaba is, spinning around you, it will create a band of light around it, and that will extend out, far, 50 feet or more, or, depending how much energy or how much consciousness you have, could go, the size of the Earth, universe, planets, whatever. But just picture that as like a galaxy almost, right? A kind of bulge in the center where all the clusters of, activity is. And then all of a sudden, those spiral radiating galaxy arms are further and further out from that. So those are just some visuals that you can work with, but it's kind of like an extended arms to the Merkaba. And it makes a lot of sense, because if I just take that little blue cube that's in here and I put it on the floor and I try to spin it within 2 revolutions or whatnot, it just falls over. It doesn't spin for that long. But all of a sudden, with these extension arms that are coming off it within the golden rhombus, when I start spinning that, it goes and goes and goes for a good long time, vertically along the √3 axis, which is just cool to see. So now, of course, this form is in a bigger form, so I'm just isolating a small piece of it, but it's in the rhombic tricontahedron. So here, this orange edged here, that's our golden rhombus. There's the cube that's in the middle. So that's what you're looking at in these images. But remember, there's a larger cube around that golden rhombus. So there's the golden rhombus, and it gets a lot bigger. So, here's the next model of it up. I know it's going to be hard for you to see. I'll show you this one at the end, but this has got the golden rhombus in it. And I've got some pictures coming up to show you that model in a larger form where I have the cube in it. So that's what you're looking at here. So this here is the Pentakis Icosidodecahedron, which is a part of that rhombic tricontahedron shape. I know I'm throwing around some gigantic words at you. Hopefully these are going to make sense. This is part of our evolution in understanding sacred geometry that, goes beyond what our understanding of the 5 platonic solids is. But when these platonic solids start to interact with one another, they start creating other forms like the Pentakis Icosidodecahedron, the Icosidodecahedron, or the rhombic tricontahedron. This is just our next level of evolution of relating with not new, but the forms that these culminating structures start to create, right? When you start putting platonic solids together, they start to create these forms. So, so this is the that Pentakis shape down here, and down in the center, it's going to be a little tricky for you to see. I've got a side view coming up as well. Right in here, that's the little blue cube that's corresponding in this drawing as the black one. That's that shape. Down within all this geometry is right down in here, and there is the golden rhombus that we've been talking about around it. So, let's just talk about spheres once again, because this is something that when I switch the view from that, it's a little more of the distorted view, because remember I said this little red circle in the middle here kind of looks like it's just floating in the cube. Well, I wanted to find out, of course, like what is that cube, what is that size of that circle, and what happens to all the geometry when it's inside the form. So here's the small little cube in the middle. And now that little red circle that's in the middle of that form, which is part of that golden rhombus, it's the same one here, That's the one they share, and it's at the center of this structure. Remember, this golden rhombus and that cube share the same space. Now that's encased in a rhombic trichontahedron. So that's that bigger shape that I'm talking about. But now it's actually nested within a larger cube. So there's the other cube. That's part of the other rhombic trichontahedron, which also has a sphere that square cube is in. And then as we expand our way out, we have the rhombic trichontahedron that's made out of that cube. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 circles that are nested within inside one another. And I can show it from this view as well. And there's the tree of life from the previous video of how it shows up in this pattern language of structural geometry within these forms. So the cool thing about this is that there isn't just any old relationship between these 4 nesting spheres. As you can see right here, these inscribed spheres are nested in a Phi relationship. So that rhombic trichontahedron sphere, now remember, it's inside because it's touching these flat faces. So on this little form here, this flat edge actually has the rhombic trichontahedron is the sphere is touching that face, all these center of these faces. So that's totally inscribed within the rhombic trichontahedron. And then these dotted lines, that would be this cube connected with this top bar. That's where the cube is within that form. And now that has the sphere in it as well. And that's in Phi relationship to one another. And then we go to the next square, or the next rhombic trichontahedron, the next form of this big one down in here. Well, that's in Phi relationship to the cube. And then when we get to this little cube that's in here at the heart of this whole thing, of course, we could keep going smaller or larger. Well, there's the next cube, the next sphere that's in Phi relationship to this one. So it's nested Phi relationships within all this, which is just totally fascinating and mind-blowing that the Phi relationship shows up between the cube and the square at multiple levels, because these are the same size spheres that we're going to be doing in our drawings. This is the nested Phi circles that are in the flower of life pattern and in the 4-petal design and in the pentagonal structure that I'll show you in a moment of how I base the drawings is on these Phi circles. Okay, so here is the Pentakis Icosidodecahedron from the side view. So this is the culminating structure. If it's going to extend beyond this, but for right now, we're just taking this isolated kind of unit, which has all this internal geometry within it. You can make out there's a larger cube here, blue cube, and that's hitting these outer vertices. And then inside this, that cube that I just showed you, you could see that bar of the cube right here at this little nodal point, well, there's where the golden rhombus is coming over to connect to the points on the cube. And now we're going to go into the next level. In here is where the other cube is, the small little blue one down in here. That's the one I've been focusing on, the smallest one that's in this unit. And that one is, I didn't build the trichontahedron around that, but that could also have the trichontahedron around it. I'm just running out of zone parts, and then looking at these images becomes just a sea of colorful lines. So at some point, the pictures get too complicated, but if you were to walk around this form, and if you were here, I could point out and show you where all these nested structures are. So that's the best I could do from that side view to show you how those drawings actually come to life in the 3rd dimension. So it was very cool this past week that I was able to look at that Pentakis icosahedron. In the previous video, I wasn't sure whether that was the Pentakis icosahedron, but I did discover that yes, that is the vertices that would be in this. And I was looking at this drawing here, and I was like, it's a little too complicated. There's too much going on. I mean, there's too many circles. Yes, it all works. And this is the drawing you would do to get all those nested tree of life in here, and you get all the smaller cubes. But I decided to see a much more simplified version of this in 3 different views. So this is the simplified version of that hexagonal 6-fold symmetry view. of just the Phi circles. So when I say Phi circles, this is the seed of life, the enhanced version, I call it, of the seed of life or flower of life. This is the seed of life, the 6 around 1 circles. So 7 circles times 2, because we've got 14 circles, because this outer circle's in Phi relationship to the one that's inside it. Think of like cracking an egg or something and seeing the white in the yellow yolk. You know, you kind of have that. You've got a white in the smaller circle in the middle. So you have that here, and that gives you all the points that you need without adding any other circles to draw this Pentakis Icosidodecahedron. Now, that's pretty big. I mean, that's like a 80-sided shape, you know, that's right there in the seed of life. So, I mean, the 20-sided shape was the icosahedron, which is the one that many people, the platonic solid that, you know, most people draw. Of course, what I've been saying is that in order to even draw the icosahedron and dodecahedron accurately, what you need to do is use this drawing of the Phi-based circles. And I can draw the icosahedron and dodecahedron in here. And that's what led me to discover a form like this, the 80-sided shape. It was impossible to do in the regular seed of life, flower of life, because none of those other vertices that I needed that were based on the Phi ratio were included in that design. So I needed to add that in order to draw those 2 Phi-based forms correctly, and that expanded the ability to draw this. But those same Phi-based circles I included now into the regular 4-petaled, 4-symmetry square view design here. There are the Phi circles, 1, 2, 3 nested down. You even get a little 4th in the middle of that whole thing. And everything you need to draw that is right here in that design. Everything you need to draw the same Pentakis shape is right here in just this classic design of the 5-fold symmetry pattern. It's all right there. So these are containing this geometric structure. 100%. The Phi circles does it on all 3 of these. Excuse me. All 3 of these are 1-for-1 accurate drawings. They're even to the same size dimension. One amazing thing about this that I really thought was just totally grand and just amazing is that when you draw, you see the blue circle within this, the blue circle that's around these, that is the same size circle for all 3 of these forms. And it is touching the vertices of the form itself. So it's not an optical illusion, like I was saying with the cube, how the sphere looks, you know, larger or smaller. This actually touches the same size sphere from all 3 views, is nested around the vertices of the form. That's one of the only forms that I've seen do this, where you can draw the same size sphere for all 3 to have it circumscribed around the shape, that it will actually not adjust the size of the sphere, and that these vertices will be in contact with that outer sphere. Very, very cool. That was really a neat discovery for me. And for these 2, the inner sphere that you would put inside the inscribed sphere, inside the form, those 2 are the same. And this one is just slightly tucked in a little bit more. So this is just the Phi circle drawings just by themselves. You know, they're very simplistic drawings. This one is a little more complicated, and there's more circles in here than you need. I just rounded it out to make it more full looking. So the 4-fold symmetry, you know, you have to hunt around to find the lines. This is so obvious. Just connect all the dots, and what you have is the Pentakis Icosidodecahedron. And this one, you know, is the kind of revolutionary for me, and this one too, because this has got the Phi-based circles, and the blue line that I showed before actually intersects the petal tips of the 6 out there, and the other one is intersecting the inner circles here. So you have, that's the main hexagonal drawing that draws the form that I was just showing you. And amazingly, I built this form before I understood and knew anything about it, like last summer, like a year and a half ago. What I did was I took the Zoom tools and I said, hey, I'm just going to take the central ball of the Zoom tool inside this, I'm just going to stick the struts, every single thing. So this ball is completely covered with struts, and then I'm just going to build the form around it. That happened to be the Pentakis Icosidodecahedron. And because I wanted to see what would happen if you radiated out from one central point all these possible, it's kind of limited because you're just using this vertices here that are associated with this ball, but it gave you all the points of the form that I'm talking about. So this is the same one from the pentagonal structure here, okay? So now we're going to make a little bit of a leap. It's funny because as I was making this, I didn't even realize that this was the form that I was making. I had to take this all apart to rebuild some of these other forms around me, only to realize that I took apart the structure that was the one that I was recreating at another scale. So, I'm a slow learner when it comes to this, but, it's kind of like your intuitive instincts kind of are leading you well in advance of the discovery of the conscious mind, making the discovery after the fact that you already intuitively discovered it prior to it. It takes the rest of me to kind of catch up to it. Okay, so now we're going to make a jump to the fourth dimension, right? So the fourth dimension is, quite a leap. It's hard for us to visualize fourth dimensional shapes because they operate under certain rules, and whenever you turn the object, it kind of looks completely different. So our 3-dimensional our 2D drawings of it are kind of the best we can do, because when we rotate the object around, it shows up in 2D drawings completely differently. Like, for instance, this shape right here is only one view of it, but the net of it is actually all these tetrahedrons interlocked and interconnected together. So it's hard for us to kind of contemplate it, but mathematically it all works out, and it's different than the dimensions that like people in the spiritual community would talk about. You're going to the fifth dimension, waking up in the fifth dimension, or the fourth dimension, you're passing through, and all the dimensions that are extended beyond that. It's different, but there's a lot of similarities, because when you start to expand your consciousness with the mandalas or the yantras of these sacred drawings, they are pointing to this multidimensional consciousness. So when we start to work with fourth dimensional designs, we're expanding our ability to perceive things at multiple levels at once, and the same object can look differently from different views and perspectives. So you're embracing a broader, wider scope of perspectives and being able to hold that all at once. So even though we might not be able to experience the fourth dimension as the geometers, mathematicians describe it, we expand our consciousness through the imagery that's associated with it and the concepts that are being described. So anyway, this is why I'm bringing in this fourth dimension, because this shape right here, this Pentakis Icosidodecahedron, there's not a lot on it. Like, I always go to the Wikipedia site to see what I could find, and I happen to look through it. They don't even give me the drawings that I could compare it to. So I was like, geez, how am I going to find out if it actually is the Pentakis Icosahedron? So I was at the site, and all of a sudden I'm reading through it, and it said, just happened to mention that it's the hull, the shape of the 600 cell. And I clicked over to the 600 cell, and I happened to just scroll down, and all of a sudden I saw this image, not with the lines, but I said, wait a second, that's the drawing I just did. That drawing is the 600 cell from a 2D drawing of a 4-dimensional object. It's showing up in the third dimension as this type of drawing. That's kind of the way it works. I know it's a little bit to wrap your head around, but this fourth dimensional hexacosihedroid is also called the tetraplex, or the tetrahedral complex. So it's bounded by 600 tetrahedral cells. And the cool thing about it, so this is a huge, multi-dimensional form. And the way you could think about that is that this is an analog to the icosahedron, which is its third-dimensional platonic solid, the icosahedron. This is the fourth dimensional icosahedron, let's just say. And there's actually 6 platonic solids in the fourth dimension. There's another one called the 24 cell that this shape here, this 600 cell, has a relationship to as well. So this platonic solid in the fourth dimension, this is what it would be on the icosahedron. It's got 1,200 triangular faces, 720 edges, and 120 vertices. And they get the 20 of these cells are meeting at each vertex. So, and just as the icosahedron has 5 triangles that meet, so the icosahedron, this is kind of how the dimensions work. So this is a regular icosahedron. You got 5 triangles meeting at each of these vertex. Well, when you go to the fourth dimension, what happens is all of a sudden you have 5 tetrahedrons now. Each of those are going to be sharing every edge. So each tetrahedron is going to share the edge with 4 others, which is just really kind of mind-boggling to think about it. But this is kind of what it would start to look like here as it's flattened out, because that's what a net is. This was meant to be like a flattened image. So this is the important thing about this 600 cell, though, and why it's important in the kind of expansion of our consciousness in relationship to sacred geometry. Now, it's related to sacred geometry because I can draw this now in 3 different views that are all the same. So this is a drawing that we can incorporate into our design pattern language, and it's also communicating about the fourth dimension. But it also contains every polytope, which basically means all the regular polytopes of all the 5 platonic solids. So all the 5 platonic solids are within this fourth dimensional icosahedron, which is just awesome. And it also contains all the polygons of 7 and above within the drawing. The only thing it doesn't include within the fourth dimension is the 5 cell. And I believe that probably has to do because the 5 cell is the analog of the tetrahedron, and the 120 cell, which is the dual of this form. And that would be like the icosahedron to the dodecahedron. Well, the dual is the dodecahedron, and the 120 cell is the 4D shape of that. So that's its dual fourth dimensional shape. So anyway, that's where we're going with this, is with this fourth dimensional shape of this tetraplex. And incredibly, the drawings that I did before I even realized that this was the fourth dimensional shape are all contained within those Phi Circle drawings. So this is actually had to verify my my Phi Circle design and actually discover that the Pentakis Icosidodecahedron was actually the shape it was based on these fourth dimensional drawings, because there wasn't any on the 3D Wikipedia page that talked about it. So anyway, here's the drawing. And just to show you, here's the Wikipedia drawing. Here's the underlying drawing directly below it. It fits right over it. And every single one of these lines, even though there are a lot, they're all connecting to the Phi base circle design that is underneath this design, right? So that's this 4-fold symmetry of the square view, right? So this is a unified sacred geometry that I'm showing you here, because it's going to transfer between all the views that we have here, and it's including these highly complex Phi structures of the regular icosahedron and dodecahedron, but now it's also incorporating all of those, including the fourth dimensional shapes. So here it is in the 5-fold symmetry of the pentagon view. So here it is, basically what it's doing is it's taking the front view and the back view of the same shape that's 3D and just layering over the lines over top of one another. But that's what the 4D shape looks like from this view. So when you go to that Wikipedia page, if you check it out, what you'll see is that there's 6 drawings of this. 3 of the other drawings are very complicated drawings. I don't know if I'll be able to do them because there's a lot of points. But 3 of the views from these perspectives of this shape, the 4D icosahedron, the tetraplex, are from, this is what they look like. So this is, once again, there's our drawing underneath, like magic. It's 1 for 1 over top. This is directly off the Wikipedia page. Let's go to the next one. Here's the one that I've really been talking a lot about because I'm really trying to rework that hexagonal view that we have from the original seed of life and flower of life to upgrade it into a way that it draws platonic solids accurately. But I just got verification from another dimension. This was kind of my joke this week, is like, you get verification from another dimension that your third dimensional 2D drawings of three-dimensional objects is working out, because now you're drawing fourth dimensional objects. So it's got the fourth dimension stamp of approval from a whole dimension above it. So it's layering between multiple dimensions within these drawings. So here's the Phi Circle drawing underneath. So you see the Phi circles giving you all the perfect vertices that you need at these intersection points. And once again, I take away the drawing from Wikipedia, and there we have our six-fold symmetry hexagon view, Pentakis Icosidodecahedron, showing the geometry that we need to represent the 4D 600-cell tetraplex from that view in the same simple design of 14 circles is bringing us to the 4D shapes. So right after I did all these discoveries, I happened, as I'm searching online, trying to find out more about this, I came across this funny, someone posted this on in my search, because I looked through the images on Google searches to see what I could find through the images. And then it said, who would win, you or some hexacosihedroid boy she tells you not to worry about? So it's like, I read that over and over again. I didn't quite get the joke until like this morning. It was like, here you are, and here's some other like amazing hexacosihedroid that she tells you not to worry about. No, don't worry about him over there. You're totally perfect. There's just this little cube over here. Which you are totally perfect as that little cube over there anyway. But what's happening here is that it's not a question of who would win, though it was surprising to me that would show up, because I do see that this is such an expansion in our understanding of sacred geometry, literally taking us from not even really being able to draw the platonic solids accurately within the flower of life pattern, even though it's totally posted everywhere on the website, drawings and techniques and many books. Metatron's cube showing up with all the lines all over the place, continually showing us, drawings of icosahedron, dodecahedron that aren't accurate. And once it kind of got aligned within those phi-based circles that I was working with, all of a sudden it kind of popped and brought it in alignment with the fourth dimensional objects that can be drawn through that. And that's just one level, because we're going extended beyond that. So sacred geometry, is evolving with our consciousness for sure. It's not like we're just discovering these shapes. In fact, all of this already exists, but most people who are into spirituality, or a lot of them probably, are letting like the mathematicians and the scientists kind of just run with this. And all this information is just kind of like hidden, buried in sites. And you look at it, and it's just super complex, lots of big words. And we can't kind of pull it down to just we look at the images and maybe we resonate with them, but we kind of can't understand it for ourselves. And we don't even have techniques to how to draw it. So how do we integrate it into the art and the fusion between our art and our science? It's just you at home as a regular person, not as a scientist, not as, a physicist or a mathematician who's working on all these complex models. But that's where they've taken this, information, and this is the bridge. The sacred geometry is the bridge to kind of brings us along with that evolution that's happening within all those arenas, and pulls it right back down and connecting it to us, as our modern scientists are continuing to do. But this is just a little thing that's been going on in my mind throughout the week. Is like, for a long time, way back in history probably, and I don't know how far back, because like I said, the ancients had advanced knowledge of a lot of this material. But some point along the way, we kind of just got stuck with like, well, how do we create the pyramids? How do we do these types of things? Where are we? And we just started out again with like, we look at this drawing and we see it kind of as like two tetrahedrons. It's a star tetrahedron. We're in a cube in a star tetrahedron, and that's what it is, And then, what's happening now is through the work of scientists that are popularizing the 64 tetrahedron grid, the star tetrahedron of this design, which essentially is this pattern that I'm showing you here, which is not the the 64 tetrahedron grid. This is the golden rhombus version of it. This is the cube. It's it's an amped up cube. This is the 64 tetrahedron grid. Basically what we said is, well, there's a lot more connecting lines inside just the two tetrahedrons of the cube. So we've got a 64 tetrahedron grid, and it's informing a lot of our science because it just all of a sudden brought it into this kind of holographic nature of reality, as we're waking up into that reality more and more. But in my view, it's still limited because it doesn't really incorporate phi. I mean, yes, we can say whenever you have a cube, whenever you have any of these forms, you have all the other forms. But the problem is that our sacred geometry drawings of this are not actually depicting that. So there's like a disconnect between what we're talking about and what we're experiencing within our visualizations, what we're experiencing within our creativity and our art forms around us. So what we got is a perfect hexagonal grid structure. As you notice, this is all built off the same green struts of equal lengths, built off of the cube octahedron, the vector equilibrium, the perfect balance form. But you see, nature isn't the perfect balance form. There's 50 to 50, 49 to 51%, or the golden cut division. There's always some fluctuation, so things continue to evolve. Well, this is what this tetraplex did, because every single line within this is divided into a phi relationship, because it's based on those phi-based circles underneath it, which is creating this form that is now not just 64 tetrahedron or 2 tetrahedron, but where we're going is to more thinking along the terms of 600 cell tetraplex and beyond, right? So it's not going to just, of course, end at that point. And even though we might not, like I said before, like look around and see the 4D reality around us, just realize that on a deep inner level, the consciousness is upgrading to hold these multiple perspectives and multiple views, that none of these are wrong. In fact, they're all the same thing, because every single little piece of this starts with one single tetrahedron that's in this, So anyway, this geometry here that I'm describing, this one here, if we just continue to draw this, it's a holographic depiction of the cube, octahedron, and tetrahedron. This is just the cube, octahedron, and tetrahedron within this drawing. Well, this one is containing all the 5 platonic solids, and I can show you all those drawings, and it's going to contain the 4D shapes within this as well. And it's also got the holographic nature. Now, I don't want to sound like I'm some sort of like geometry car salesman or something with this, It's not about that. You have to explore this on your own, really take it for a test drive yourself, do the drawings, find out how it moves and how it operates within your field and consciousness and perspective, and just discover what unlocks for you if you're into doing the sacred geometry drawings or contemplating this, or meditating and visualizing. Because remember, this is just a process of evolution that contains the past, present, and future all at once. And in my next video coming up, we're going to go even further, because for me, it's just happening pretty rapidly, because once you start to build off of one, fourth dimension, the fourth dimension object that we're working with as it expands out to the next level brings us to the fifth dimension. So I've got drawings and forms that are being created that are 3D representations of, that can show up in 3D, that are also looking like the pictures of the fifth dimensional objects. So, this one here was inspired, last night. I came up with this earlier in the week, and now this is a crop circle that showed up in a field in 2011 that one of my apprentices just happened to send to me last night. And I just created this drawing this past week, and it even showed up in another website earlier today. And last night I did this artistic expression of this. So this is the 5D hypercube. So this is now one step. This is made up of 10 tesseracts. Now we've gone from the tesseract itself, the 4D object, which is what we're when we're in 3D, we're often like, oh, the tesseract, because it's made up of 8 cubes. But now all of a sudden, we're going to make this up out of 10 tesseracts. And that's now 5D. So look forward to my upcoming video talking about this structure and the related drawing geometry that's associated with that. And yeah, so anyway, that's kind of the whole spiel for this video. You know, it all really just started with me from the slight perspective change within the orientation of the cube and finding this golden rhombus, and kind of just going into the empty space is not empty, and realizing there's so many interconnections within here. You know, adjusting the cube was just huge in my perceptual awareness that in those drawings, it wasn't oriented with the vertice, with this bar here, this vertical line here. It's shifted like this so that the golden rhombus was oriented like this. That's one part of one cube of 5 that are in the dodecahedron. So this is just an important concept to get across, that in every dodecahedron that we see, each one of these bars that we see here, of these 5-pointed stars, are one portion of a cube. And you can see that this is a cube, or a square it will look like in 2D, that I'm tracing my finger around. That's one of the cubes that are in this form. So it's just one. And there's 5 in here. So when we draw this, what we're going to be doing in that hexagonal view is orienting it so this vertical bar of the dodecahedron is straight, but then all of a sudden that cube is offset inside it. So that was the big thing that kind of led to the unlocking of many, many more forms. And yeah, so this is where we're going next. I just want to show you the next form, kind of sneak peek at it. So stick around and be prepared for this one that is going to bring us into our 5th dimensional forms. And from a few different views, I'll show you. Let's see, we'll line it up to the pentagon view if I could find it. Yeah, so there it is. This is the pentagon view. Look at how all the white zone balls there kind of spiral around into those things. Those are in the 5 relationship circles that you're looking out there. So in our next video, we're going to get into that. So anyway, I'm wishing everybody, you know, have a great week. You know, much blessings to you, and much love. And I appreciate you coming and watching the videos. And always appreciate any comment and points to, you know, new directions for me to look at. I always explore every reference that someone points in there, and I'm always happy to respond and get into conversation around this amazing, beautiful subject of sacred geometry. So much love. I'll see you later. Bye.